Eastern Kentucky, where I was raised, where the wildlife and mountains call my name. I was born to hunt, I was born to guide, a camouflage on a rifle by my side. Just good old country boys chasing dreams in the Appalachian Mountains, a field of streams. From those white-tailed bucks strutting toms, the bugling elks that are on the run. Where those dreams are made, the trophies is our game. The TLC Outfitters is our name. The coyotes run all night. It's music to my ears and in my sights. I've got this hunting fever down in my bones. Glad my daddy taught me everything I know. From those white-tailed bucks strutting toms, the bugling elks that are on the run. Where dreams are made, the trophies is our game. The TLC Outfitters is our name. From those white-tailed bucks strutting toms, the bugling elks that are on the run. Where dreams are made, the trophies is our game. The TLC Outfitters is our name. The TLC Outfitter is our name.
I want to know why your face always gets to pop up first.
Hey, buddy, I'm special.
I heard that. Hey, folks, happy Tuesday night. Hope everybody's having a great start to the weekend. My name's Trinity Shepherd, and as always, joined by Matt Woolwine. Welcome to On Air and Outdoors with TLC Outfitters. We hope that you all are having a great start to your week. Better than that, I hope everybody had a great weekend, man. I know we did. How did your weekend go?
It was great, man. I'm grinning like a possum because I've been in the berry bushes, you know what I mean?
You like one of those old big fatted black bear we see running around up here every day now.
That's right, son. I'll tell you what, it might have been a dry spring and a dry early summer, but it's a bumper crop year for blackberries in our neck of the woods.
It sure is, man. We got into some black raspberries a couple of weeks ago on a trail ride we went on, so it's been pretty good. We got 3 big strawberry buckets full. I don't know how many gallons it's going to come out to, and I know y'all got a bunch too. And who knows, may even see some of that stuff coming up on YouTube on our new YouTube channel, and pretty excited about that. So I'm more excited about getting out there and trying that blackberry jam.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else I found yesterday is pretty exciting. You know, God puts goodies everywhere. Whether it's painting the sky with cotton candy, or whether it's blackberries, or whether it's pawpaws off the tree, or persimmons, God's got goodies everywhere. And we run across a big goodie yesterday, and that would come in the form of a big old Berkeley's polypore mushroom.
Oh,
and that thing's about the size of a basketball, so. We're gonna get that thing cleaned up and probably in the freezer.
Yeah, man, that's awesome right there. You know, I was thinking this weekend. You probably can't tell now, but I look like I've been in a fight with about 10 bobcats, multifluoros, whatever. And I couldn't help but think about, you know, what a comedian our good Lord above, our Heavenly Father, must be putting such beautiful things, the most beautiful things. With a price to pay, trying to get him out of all those thorns. And I know he's just sitting up there laughing away at us.
Yep, that's right.
Oh, goodness. We're joined by some folks tonight. Of course, our number one fan, my mama, says, hello, son. Got to spend the day with her yesterday. Very thankful for her and our day out. Hi, mama. And our good buddy down south. And, man, we're inching closer to October, baby. That's Gator Paul Shear right there says, hey, guys, hope to have about a 12-foot gator to take to him come October.
I'll settle for 10, but 12 would be nice.
That's right. We got a couple good guides down there anyway, going to be taking us gator hunting and all that stuff.
Hey, I'll tell you what, Mama Shirley, she's a professional at them blackberry, making them preserves and this canning and making them preserves and different things. But me and Jill tried to do it on our own this weekend, and I think everything turned out all right. Sure tastes good, that's for sure.
Yep.
But Mama Shirley may have some pointers for us in the future for our next go around, I hope.
I've tried to get her to do a cannon class on video. She's a little camera shy. If we could get her out of that a little bit, maybe get her on video, man, you talk about a wealth of knowledge.
Let me tell you something. I've never eaten anything in the jam, jelly, preserve world as good as her wild grape jelly.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's unreal. It's unreal.
Just follow directions, she said. Her directions are all up here. That's the problem.
Yeah, you can follow directions all you want to, but until you've done it a couple hundred times and it comes second nature, you're always more worried about the directions than you are about what's actually going on the stove. You know?
That's right. And she's actually working on a book. She's been working on it for a few months now, and it's going to be all kinds of old-fashioned recipes, home remedies, and a time pass. So I got to keep her motivated on that, and I'm pretty excited about that. It may be everybody's Christmas gift this year. I don't know.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah. Matt needs to start with an 8-footer so I can see it kick his butt. Hey, let me tell you something. I know another 8, almost 9-foot gator kicked a couple other guys' tail. I know all about it. So 10-foot probably pull us in. Uncle Kenny's here.
Hey, Kenny.
Thank y'all so much.
I'm not as worried about wrestling the gator as I am about getting the meat home and the pictures. That's what I want. I'll let y'all wrestle it. As long as I get the meat to bring home, y'all can wrestle it all you want to.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, an 8-foot lizard might not sound like a formidable opponent. I'm going to tell you right now, you put one of them gators in the water almost 9 feet long, and you get a hold of them, you feel what amazing power they are. I cannot wait, dude. It is going to be phenomenal. Get to go down and spend some time with Wayne and Scott and all of our Florida family. And look right here. Miss Sarah says, hi, Trendy and Matt. And, of course, you get to see nature.
That's right.
Yeah. Man, we are so excited tonight for our guest. If you joined us last week, we started a 3-part series on food plots. I've been wanting to do this for some time, and the time just hasn't been right. But we are joined tonight. Now, I'm going to tell you something. For those people that get to tune in tonight, they're in for a real treat. We was joined by Ben Moore last year. I hold Ben very high in the outdoor world with a lot of knowledge, and you and him talking about basic food plot principles last week. Well, we graduated from freshman season to sophomore now. We're up to Food Plot 201, and that's advanced food plot techniques, advanced food plot plantings. And we are joined by special guest Randall Alcorn tonight from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. He is a private lands biologist and an NRCS liaison, has well over a decade of habitat and wildlife management. Has worked with a lot of programs. He's going to be talking to us tonight about field management, hillside management, timber stand, forest stand improvement plans, habitat programs that landowners can get into, classes, and much, much more. Randall has took time out of his busy season, and, man, we are joined by a true expert on this subject matter, and I'm glad to graduate to another week and learn a lot about food plots tonight. We are excited to have Randall on the show tonight, so we appreciate him very much. Also, folks, if you've not done so, we asked you last week to get on fw.ky.gov. I'm going to tell you right now, the Commonwealth, our great Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I'm so proud to be where we're from. I'm proud to be from the central part or the eastern part, and I know Matt's proud to be from where he's from. But our Fish and Wildlife Department has put together one of the best websites and easiest websites. As Matt and I, many of our other members of our group, hunt many, many other states. It's always good to go see other states, but I have to tell you, our Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife has put together a website that's easy for the users to be able to navigate, get around, and find whatever information. And it is chock full of wildlife, fisheries information. You could go on there and spend many, many hours and learn something that you didn't know before. So I urge everybody to go on fw.ky.gov, but you need to go on there and finish the turkey survey. If you're a turkey hunter, you owe it to the resource. Get on there. It won't take you 5 minutes to fill out that turkey survey if you hunted turkeys this year. Also, it's out just a little bit early. Those texts have been pouring in today, Matt. Our elk hunters have got their unit drawn. So elk hunters can log on to their profile and see what unit they got drawn for as they make another step towards that coveted one. I won't say once in a lifetime, but definitely hunt of a lifetime Kentucky elk hunt this year. And if you've not done so and you're watching this, log on to your profile and check out which unit you got drawn for. So that's one step closer. Mom still haven't got to try gator. Shame on you, Trendy. I've not even the gator we took. I've not even got to eat any. I think Corey's got it all hoarded up over there. So I've not even got to eat any gator. That's pretty sad, isn't it?
I'll bring you some back, Mama.
There you go. All right, folks, we're going to bring on our guest, Mr. Randall Alcorn. We're going to bring him on right here. Hey, man, how's it going?
Pretty good. How y'all doing?
Doing all right, man. Thanks for taking time out to be with us tonight.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me.
We're excited, man. So we got a lot to cover. I got a lot of slides. You've sent me all kinds of stuff tonight. I'm so excited to go over all this. We last week we talked about food plot basics. And this week we graduate to the next level of advanced food plot techniques. But before we get into that, man, we got to know who we're talking about. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself. How did you or why did you want to become a part of our great Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife? And tell them a little about the years of experience you've got in this field.
Yeah, so I have been with the department 13 years in October. The reason I wanted to get into fish and wildlife management, my dad is actually a taxidermist, and I would see these big animals come in, and it just intrigued me, places where I hunted and I wasn't seeing the same thing. And it kind of got me into like, okay, why are folks seeing these size deer in these areas and I'm not seeing anything? And then it kind of got me looking into management, and then I realized that you can have a career and doing management. So that's when I kind of got started pursuing that career into fish and wildlife. I started out as a technician on one of our WMAs, the Clay WMA in Nicholas County. Pretty much there, a technician, you just help put in food plots, do habitat management on at that time it was about 7,500 acres. I think they're up to about 9,000 acres now. And then I took a position where I was kind of a hybrid private lands biologist, but also worked with the Farm Bill program, and I can discuss that later on. But then eventually we had a kind of a turnover in our department, and now we're private lands biologists. So my main duties is I go and assist private landowners with technical guidance based on what their goals are for the property. I help them with management plans, and then as a liaison with NRCS, there's cost share programs available that I can help landowners with that avenue as well through NRCS. And I can get into that a little bit more detail, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Let's pause right there. I just want everybody out there to know that, we talk about these different programs pretty often on airs and outdoors about the Fish and Wildlife Department and what they can offer and how they can help landowners and things. But I want everybody out there to know that I don't know, somewhere in the 2003, 2004 time period, I bought a farm up in Fleming County. Me and Trinity graduated from Morehead State, and I really liked the area, and I bought a farm up around Fleming County and ended up having close to 300 acres up there when it was all said and done. But I went through, and I don't think they call it this now, but the WRP program, the Wetlands Reserve Program, and the department was intricate in getting all that set up. I couldn't tell you all the names that I dealt with throughout, through the department at that time, but it ended up being an 81-acre perpetual easement for wetlands. And I'll be honest with you, man, that was, and Trini can tell you, that was a super exciting time in my life. To be able to contribute back to nature and the state, and just to know that that property was going to be that from then on. And when the other landowners around me caught on to what was going on, I'm going to say there was probably 150 acres right there in one area that was in some kind of easement, one easement or the other. But the 81 acres that I had was a perpetual easement for wetlands. And when you add those other acres that bordered that right around there, I tell you, I think about it all the time. I want to go up there and see what it looks like today. But then I'm like, no, I don't want to go up there and see it because I'm going to be mad I got rid of it.
And what people don't realize is that the amount of black duck that was in this area was staggering. Black duck is kind of, it's been a species of that's been on the radar for the department for a while, but the amount of black duck there was staggering. I've never been to another part of the state seen that many black ducks. So, it was a great.
At one time, they talked about going up there and banding some because the population up there was so dense with black ducks. That never happened to my knowledge, at least while I owned it, but I don't know what's happened between then and now. But sorry to interrupt. I just want everybody to know that this isn't a farce. It's not a fairy tale. The department's there to help you, and these programs that Randall's going to touch on later, they're tangible. Anybody can apply for them, and the department can walk you through, and it may or may not be for you. You just got to look out, but they are tangible. It's not a fairy tale. Sorry, Randall.
No, that program's still around. They just changed it to it's Wetland Reserve Easement now instead of Wetland Reserve Project. But yeah, right. So we're still doing them. They do a lot out in Western Kentucky, but it's an excellent program.
Yeah, fantastic. So last week we're kind of past. All the basics. We touched on picking out a spot. We touched on soil samples. We touched on all that stuff, even as far as staying simple, getting it in the ground, good seed, all that stuff. So now we want to talk about the advanced stuff. We want to talk about how to get the most out of your land. And I guess and people have to bear with us just a little bit watching. We kind of done this thing back and forth over email, and I may have got some of these photos out of line. So forgive me for that, but I guess we'll start with field management.
Okay.
And before we pull anything up, just you kind of lead us and tell me where I need to go, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'll pretty much start out with how I take when somebody calls me and asks me to come out to their property, I'll take it from that step. The first thing I want to ask you is, what are your goals for the property? Because depending on what you're wanting to see out there, what you're wanting to manage for is going to dictate, how much management you need to put into it versus how little management, or vice versa. If you're wanting to manage for grouse, for example, that's kind of species that needs all the help it can get, I mean, that's going to take some intense management to manage for grouse, as opposed to, managing for deer. Grouse is a specialist, whereas deer is a generalist. So you can kind of, they require a little bit different management skills. So that's the first thing I'm going to ask when I approach your property. And then, we can just go take a look at things. And a lot of stuff, equipment's usually a big issue with landowners, having the right equipment. But if you've got a sprayer and ATV, you can actually get a lot done on a habitat scale, just by spraying, either general herbicides or select herbicides to target different types of species you want to flourish in the area. So that's pretty much how I start out with my approach to landowner visits. Get a goal in mind on how you want that property managed in your eyes, and then I go from there and I try to scale a management plan based on what you're wanting to see.
Fantastic. So people really need to know what they're wanting to manage for. And I think too, sometimes we get caught up in one species. You can do things along the way that's going to help multiple species. You don't need to be so narrow-minded or laser focused that you're just focusing on deer or just focusing on turkey, correct?
Correct. I mean, stuff you do for quail or grouse is going to benefit deer, turkey. The more specifics you get on management, it's going to benefit the more generalist species. You don't necessarily, I ask what your goals are. Your goals, I've had many folks tell me, well, treat it like it's your property, and what would you do? I can do that. It may not exactly be what you want. So if you just got some kind of mind, hey, I want to see more rabbits, I want to see more quail, something like that, it kind of gives me something to go on at that point.
I think one of the biggest disclaimer, or the biggest derailment for people when it comes to food plots, is they have in their mind that it's got to be this manicured, clean cut, what you see on TV, so someplace in Iowa with all the acreage of corn or soybeans or this or that. And I think sometimes we really get a mindset of way that we think it should be versus how it really should be. Can you touch on that a little bit? Habitat management, food plot management, or getting the most out of your land, because food plots is only one small part. Planting food is only one small part of habitat management or private land management. Can you touch a little bit and tell folks about, it doesn't always have to look like you see on TV.
Right. Yeah, food plots, I look at them as areas you're wanting to concentrate wildlife. They can be a supplemental feed, parts of the summer if you're doing annuals, when it gets really hot, or if we get a really bad winter, it's a good place for, the wildlife to go to. And clover, for example, I love clover as a food plot. Everything pretty much walking eats clover. It's pretty low maintenance once you get established, mowing it a couple times a year, just kind of keeping the weeds out. But then again, you don't have to have it manicured. That when you mow it, it just stimulates it to grow a little bit, especially in the spring and the fall. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that we consider weeds, that's actually what a lot of wildlife are going in and eating. They're picking at that too while they're eating clover. So no, it doesn't have to be a manicured side. I mean, you don't want the weeds to take it over to where it, starts crowding out what you're actually wanting to accomplish with that food plot. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be a manicure. This needs to be in a magazine type setting. It's going to get use with very little maintenance. And the big thing is, I like my food plots, depending on how many people are hunting or what type of hunt you're doing, 3/4 acre to an acre, is a good sized food plot in my opinion. I just like them, that's for if you're doing like a cool season food plot. Now you're getting annual grains and stuff in there. Of course, you want them to be a little bit bigger, but you can fit those 1/2 acre to an acre size food plots right in some edge of cover and things, and they're going to get used a lot. When food is that close to cover, because that's the big thing is cover, and that's something we can hit on a little bit later. But cover is usually the one thing it's lacking on a lot of properties.
Yeah. And when we talked last week about leaving sanctuaries, which is basically covered,
Yep.
having sanctuary, having a place where those animals feel safe and secure is as important as what you put in the ground.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you can see I've got a slide a little bit later on, but those sanctuaries, make them thick. Those are design areas that you don't want to go busting through there. You want that animal or deer to feel safe in that area, and that's where he wants to hang out. The less pressure you put on him, the more apt he's going to be to slip up at the time you're hunting. So, yeah, make those thickets. Don't be scared to make those thickets. We can help you. If you're not very comfortable on your trees species or identifying areas that would make good cover and thickets, that's what we're here for. That's why we're here to guide you, so we can help you with those decisions. A lot of folks don't want to see all that mess, and that's fine. We can find you a spot in the back 40 to put it. So that's usually the big thing is cover, and you get cover on your property, and you'll start seeing the animals show up.
Yeah. Now, if I get these out of order, I apologize, man. So I've got a field thicket. I think this is a field before. You really get into it. It looks like we got some invasives and things right here. What we got right here?
Yeah. So this is one thing. Again, when that first step I take when I'm meeting with a landowner, what kind of invasives are present? Because that's going to dictate your management too. You don't want to be doing a lot of heavy forest management when you've got things. This is autumn olive right here. It can get in the forest understory. It tends to take over fields or field edges. I've got another one, a bush honeysuckle. That's more of a understory invasive, but those are things I'm looking for. And those are just things to keep in mind. I mean, everybody has invasives on their property. It can be anything from grasses all the way up to trees. Tree of heaven is one in eastern Kentucky that's seen a lot. But, identifying those invasives and kind of looking at them, okay, well, how heavy of an infestation do we have here? Is this something we need to address before, we do a patch clear cut or we do forest stand improvement? Because you don't want to throw a bunch of sunlight on invasives and let them just take over and, take out your native species, which are actually the ones that your wildlife want to have. They will forage on invasives and things, but they're just not the quality of forage that they need to have more than our invasives. So that's what this is. It's an autumn olive thicket. This was an old reclaimed mine site, which is autumn olive has a field day in those.
Yeah, we are. These things will take over. And when I say take over, we done last year, we done some work on our farm, and there was autumn olives we pushed out with a dozer that would stop a wide track, 450, 550 dozer in its tracks that were, 20, 30 plus years old. So, and when they get that big, they're a real nuisance to be able to deal with. So, not just what you put in, but sometimes what you take out is as important as well when it comes to your property management.
Yep.
Let's see. Talking about field. So I got some field edge. You want to talk about the edges?
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know.
So yeah, that's the honeysuckle right there. Typically, this is going to be in the central part of the state right now, but you can see, of course, it's growing a little bit thicker here on the edge because it's getting the hair a little bit more sunlight. But that stuff is 8 to 10 foot tall in the understory, and if you're trying to generate the next crop of forest seedlings, oak, for example, it can't compete with the invasives that are in the understory. So that's something I'm looking for. Basically just to kind of help with your management techniques, because I don't want you to put a bunch of effort into something that I know is not going to be successful because of an invasive like this, for example. So it's a lot of work to get that out of there. You can use a forester chipper if it's really, really dense, or a lot of folks use a chainsaw and a spray bottle of herbicide, and you cut it off and spray that stump.
Yeah.
Randall, if you could drop one of them forestry heads off at my house for about 6 months, I would certainly appreciate it.
Well, we'll see what we do. We throw it on the flatbed and just run it right down there.
Now,
I'm driving on the highway. I don't care.
There you go. Now this is bush honeysuckle. This isn't do we have two types of honeysuckle that we have to battle sometimes?
Yeah, so this one is the bush honeysuckle, and then there's also the Japanese honeysuckle, which is more of a vine. Now that one can get out of hand too. It tends to climb trees and stay on the edges more so than actually get into the forest, from what I've noticed. But it is another invasive that you got to kind of watch out for.
Very good. Let's see. The edge that's cut or the edge that's not cut, which one? We want to talk about this one?
Okay, yeah. So this is edge feathering right here, or the practice of edge feathering. And a lot of species, all the way up from migratory birds to as big as white-tailed deer, depend on edge species, or the edge habitat. And what you're trying to do here is you're trying to get rid of the hard edge, so to speak. So you don't want forest leading right out into an open field. For one thing, it invites predators to hang out. Hawks, for example, can just sit right on the edge of the trees and watch that field. But when you essentially do edge feathering, what you're doing is the first 10 or 15 feet, you're essentially clear cutting everything. And then you take out about 50% of the basal area, and you step it back to about 20% of the basal area until you get into the mature forest. And essentially, you're just creating different levels of habitat is what you're doing here. Again, you're creating cover, you're creating browsing opportunity. And, we hear all the time in white-tailed deer hunting, staging areas.
Yeah.
This is a staging area for deer that what they'll use. So they'll, unless you're paying attention, they'll step right out in this stuff. It's about shoulder high to them. And they'll just kind of hang out there and look, scan the field before they step on out. So making cover like this just makes everything feel more comfortable, especially when you've got, a clover plot or some kind of food plot right there that you're wanting them to step into. And then the next picture just shows the growth. So that edge feathering was done in the wintertime. So you see here, you see how it kind of stair steps up and then gets into the forest. So that's what you're trying to achieve, is just that different level on edge. Now this field out here to the left is actually a warm season grass field that they actually cut. But so that'll go into a warm season grass field, and they got a food plot that's back to the left here. But that's essentially what that is edge feather. That just shows the practice was done in the wintertime, and this is the early growth in the spring, the green up.
Very good. Look here, Matt. What we got with us? Our frog gigging.
I got you. Hey, Trini, while you're thinking about it, you need to put those gifts in your truck for when you come down here this weekend.
I will.
I mean, you've been here 3 times and you ain't brought them yet.
Listen, man, I don't want to hear you, okay? I forget something every once in a while, and this is all I get. Let's get back to food plots, okay? Thanks, Tyler, you and Eleanor, for coming in, and thanks for being so pleasant, unlike other people I know. Appreciate you, Tyler. All right, now we're going to go to some field stuff. Now, I've got a stair step. I've got a full field here, but I think before we get there, we probably need to.
Yeah, so this is just showing with any good food plot, the big thing is your site prep. Getting rid of the competition beforehand, getting yourself a good seed bed, and that just gives you a better chance of success when you put that food plot in. And that's just kind of showing you how, you want that good seed bed when you put your food plots in. That's just kind of this picture here showing a good seed bed.
Now, one thing that you'll hear a lot of time people will talk about, they worry about how deep to plant certain species. How important is that when you're depending, from planting something as small as clover all the way up to corn and soybeans? How important is the depth of planting?
Depth's very important. If you get it too deep, it won't come up. It has a hard time germinating and pushing up through the soil. Corn, soybeans, if you don't get it deep enough, the crows will have a field day in your food plot. Me personally, when I do a clover plot, I will get it like this, and then I will broadcast it, and I try to do it right before a rain, or I know it's getting ready to heavily frost. and I let the rain or the frost actually set the seed for them. And that seems to work out pretty good for me on getting that in there. And then as far as corn, soybean, you're looking at, inch and a half deep in the soil. But yeah, if you get it too deep, it's going to have a hard time germinating, pushing up through that soil.
Yeah.
So on this picture, we talk about more management. This is showing that, I work with agriculture producers all the time. And that's kind of what this picture's showing. To the right, you can see that fence running out through there. There's cattle that use that portion of this field. And this left-hand side is the Cumberland River is actually to the left there. And they have set back a riparian area. And they've planted it in warm season grasses. And then about 20 feet off the edge of the Cumberland River there, they've actually put in more bottomland oak species and black walnut, things of that nature to kind of build that riparian up a little bit more. So what they're doing is they're actually making a habitat for deer is what they're really wanting here. And it's connecting habitats. You got that forest at the end of it back in there, and there's actually forest behind us. And they had this pasture field essentially, and then the deer would essentially walk the creek or the riverbed there to get back and forth. So, they wanted to see more deer. They wanted to hunt this. This area tends to, when the Cumberland River, when you get a lot of rain, it tends to back up and flood in this area. So, I suggested doing a riparian buffer to build up that habitat, and we planted some switchgrass, which is really wet tolerant, and we built that habitat up. But it don't have to be this big. This was actually about 80 feet wide, but it doesn't need to be that big. And I'm just showing this to say that I work with agriculture producers all the time. If you can give 15 to 20 feet around your field edges, a lot of times that's all you need. And they'll get utilized quite a bit. And it's all about, you talk about habitat, it's all about putting things together. And if you can do that, you'll see a lot more species diversity, a lot more movement in the wildlife.
We got a cattle farmer right here with us. Matt, you got any questions about that or anything to add?
No, I'm pretty familiar with how this is set up. That was a question, though. One thing that I do is all my interior fences on my farms. When I cut hay or I pasture cattle or whatever, especially on my hay fields, I'll actually leave some of that grass standing, which I'm cutting all the cover for the rabbits away for the most part, or the turkey nesting habitat and this and that. But what I'll do is I'll stay 5-10 feet away from the fence on each side of the fence, which will leave a 15-20 foot wide still growed up area for those nesting and for cover for those ground animals.
And there's some new techniques coming out, and precision ag is one of them. It's a theory that it's a lot being used. It's being used out in West Kentucky a little bit, and essentially what that's doing is it's looking at crop fields, and it's actually showing you, if you've got 100 acres, maybe you've got 5 acres around the border that you're actually losing money harvesting that corn on those edges with the amount of fuel and the depreciation on your tractor. So you'd be better off, participating in programs like CRP and stuff to make that into wildlife habitat, and you'll get a better bang for your buck.
Right.
I've got some yellow flowers, some clover, and then a full field. Which one would you like next?
Yeah, the yellow flower, as far as food plot, that's actually partridge pea. I thought this was very unique because when you start talking about food plots, I had a landowner actually plant a whole field in partridge pea because the deer absolutely tore it up. And you think about it, it's a legume, and they just hammer it out. And so this was that field that he used as a food plot. So it don't have to necessarily be the traditional stuff that we think of as far as food plots. Stuff like partridge pea is a good example. And this stuff is fairly inexpensive. It's about $2.50 a pound. And, half acre, you're probably looking at 2 pounds is what you would need to plant that. And again, it's just, broadcast it, let the rain set it for you. And then the clover pot is just, like I said, I typically recommend clover pots when people ask me about food plots. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. I mean, it just serves so many good purposes. Now you can mix that in with annuals as well, but I'm just a huge fan of clover as far as a food plot.
When you speak of clover, when you talk about clover, are you talking about white, red, sweet clover? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at mostly ladino, the white clover. Now you can mix some red in there as well. If you want to get really creative, you can throw some crimson clover in there. It's an annual, but it'll reseed itself a little bit if you let it go to head and stuff. But it's all it gets foraged upon pretty regularly too. It produces it gets about 10, 12 inches tall and has a really fluorescent red flower on it. But yeah, most time, when you look at places that, either folks want to put a food plot or where you're recommending a food plot, it's typically getting a lot of shade or getting some shade when you're talking about doing a cool season food plot. So, ladino clover or just white clovers in general do well in the shade. And so they just make excellent food plots when you're talking about forest edges and things.
Something else about clover plots. This spring and early summer, we went into that drought, and a clover is fairly drought tolerant.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this year in cattle pastures, hay pastures, and stuff like that, that even though we had that really really dry weather, it might not have been the best hay year for as far as tonnage, but it really seems like the clover's coming on, especially now that it's got a little shot of rain, and the clovers are just doing great this year, at least around Madison County here.
Yeah, I've seen that myself, especially after the first cutting. You walk some of these fields and the clover's out competing the grass on the regrowth.
Yep. Very good. What are we looking at right here? Some clover?
Yeah, that's just a big, that's about a half acre plot of ladino clover.
Yeah. Now, we talk about clover. Why, or kind of explain why is clover such a good go-to and all the benefits of clover all the way around?
Well, the reason I like clover, it's a nitrogen fixture. So it's going to, it can handle pretty subpar soils, and, it fixes its own nitrogen. The nitrogen in plants is a big component on forage for animals. And then clover is fairly inexpensive, and it's pretty easy to establish, and it's got low maintenance. 3 or 4 pounds of clover to the acre, you can get away with that. You're looking at about $15, $20 worth, and then low maintenance. This field, the guy top clipped it back in the spring, back in early April, and now it's been left to grow. But top clipping it once or twice a year, typically before you coming into the cool season, the cool parts of the year, and you can just knock back the weeds, and you can just watch that clover just kind of flourish up and take off growing. Those are kind of the reasons I like it. It's relatively available to landowners, and it's fairly easy to put in.
Very good. What we got here?
So this is we talk about cover and things a lot of times, and when you talk about fields that maybe you're no longer wanting to do hay fields, or no longer wanting to do pasture fields, converting them over to warm season grasses is another excellent way to introduce cover and habitat into your management plan. Deer will use this to bed in. You'll get some forbs coming up here that they'll pick around and stuff. But quail will use this quite a bit too, you can see how the grasses, this is Indian grass and big blue stem, but you can see how they grow in the clumps, those tight clumps. And that allows, small mammals like rabbits and your upland birds like quail to be able to maneuver through there and feed on insects and feed on seeds without the threat of a hawk getting them from up top, because a hawk can't penetrate through all that. And, if they can see them at all, and it just gives them overhead cover and allows them to maneuver through. And it's just warm season grasses is a good go-to when you're wanting to, move a field out of some kind of production. This also makes great cattle forage as well. And it's, we're, as an agency, we're actually trying to get more landowners, more farmers to use warm season grasses in their production, because this is very drought tolerant. You're talking about a plant that's going to put a taproot down 4 to 6 feet, and it thrives in hot, humid conditions. So the idea is, if you're talking about cattle forage, is, you feed on fescue all the way up to May, June. You pull them off, rotate them on warm season grasses when it's actively growing, give your cool seasons a break, and then put your cattle back on cool seasons into September going into October. And that just gives your pasture fields a break.
Very good. We got a question here. We've got our buddy Justin Tinsley from Tinsley Custom Wildlife says, do they still have any programs for bush honeysuckle?
Yes, that comes into the NRCS portion of my program, the liaison portion. So a lot of times when I meet with landowners and we get together a management plan, there's cost share programs available through NRCS that will actually pay landowners to do conservation work. So if you have invasive species issues, they will actually pay you per acre to get rid of those invasives. And as well as other conservation programs, but specifically for that question, yes, there is money available to still do the bush honeysuckle eradication.
Our good buddy Bob Hunt says, great info, great podcast, y'all. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you. I know your phone has to be ringing off the hook after the unit draws come out, so I hope you got every place you needed there, buddy. I appreciate you very much. A fantastic, right there, a fantastic elk guide, one of the best in the business right there. All right. Now, are there anything? Go ahead.
I got a question. We talk about liming and getting the pH levels and stuff right in the soil for food plots. We talk about fertilizing. Give us a little more insight on micronutrients. You can grow a big, beautiful food plot, but it still may not be necessarily as palatable to the deer and different things as it could be. So can you touch a little bit on the micronutrients that and how do we accomplish increasing that in our food plots?
That's going a little bit out of my realm there a little bit. But, that's back in the old college days, that stuff. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done some soils class and stuff, but that, getting into other resources, I would encourage everybody to take a soil sample and take that. Usually there's an extension agent in every county, UK extension, and they actually will give you a free soil test, and they can help explain the importance of the micro and macronutrients in the soils and things, and what you might be lacking to help build it up a little bit.
Very good. Yeah, it's important to get to know your extension officer. Like here in Floyd County, we've got a soil conservation officer, Tony Grubbs, and he's excellent to work with, the soil conservation officer. And a lot of these places, either for a small fee or will do it for free if you're a landowner. And you can bring your soil samples in, go and talk to them about how to gather those, or sometimes they'll even come out for you and gather those for you. And that's about as important. Before you sink any money into anything, the first thing you need to do is take a soil sample, because if you say, I don't really need it, I know what I'm doing, old saying goes, you may be throwing your money down a crawdad hole. That's very true.
Yeah. You know, in here in our county, Randall, I think it's up to 10 samples for landowners.
Yep.
That at no cost. So
Yep. That's yeah, you can, and they'll actually give you the kits. You go there and they'll give you the kit, and they'll actually, you know, a lot of times they have your maps. You can show them your maps, and they can give you an idea where you take your samples and things.
Very good.
To get the best overall, you know, information from your fields.
We got a question here from Bob. Says, can you explain the benefits of controlled burns? I was going to ask you about that with those native warm season grasses there. This is a good question. Can you explain the benefits of controlled burns and when to plant fall plots? So let's talk about controlled burns and fire dependency.
Yep. So, you know, going back to those warm season grasses, those are fire dependent grasses. Really, they thrive after fire, and we use those a lot of times to stimulate those, and also for you can use them for a couple of things. One thing is to keep trees out of there. You know, instead of going through a bush hogging and mowing, then you've got all this thatch and stuff. You can run fire through there, and it's actually good for tree control that might be coming into your native warm season grass plot or your pollinator plot, for example. But we typically do the control burns. It depends on what you're shooting for. If you're wanting to stimulate and create more grasses, then you can do those in the spring. We typically start burning our WMAs. We start managing those middle of February all the way up to the middle of April is when we try to get our burns in. Again, you're taking a lot of the thatch off and you're stimulating the clumps of grasses. You're actually heating those up and stimulating them a little bit so they can get a little jump start growth. And it also helps germinate the seeds that they may have released over the winter in the soil. So it thickens your stand up by doing a spring burn on a grass plot. Now you can do growing season burns. Now to do those, the conditions have to be a little bit more favorable for lower humidity to get those burns to kind of, and what you're looking for is you're trying to catch that grass as it's getting ready to go dormant. And you do those when your stand is too thick. And what you can do is you can actually decrease some of the grass that's in your stand by doing that. Because if you burn it as it's trying to store up energy, you know, it's going to reduce the amount that comes back up the next year. And also we're doing it in the fall, you tend to get a lot more forb increase as opposed to in the spring and stuff. Those are kind of the benefits of doing control burns, and they're a lot of fun.
When to plant fall plots?
So I typically like to go fall plots towards in August, towards the 1st of September, somewhere in that range, to make sure you get good germination going into October. Now, if you're a bow hunter, you're going to want to get it a little bit earlier. But sometime in August is when I suggest putting those in. If you want to get it ready for the fall, you know, August, September.
What's your go-to fall plot?
Now, if you're coming off annual, you got an annual field. I love winter wheat. Throw some winter wheat in there, and that'll give you a nice food plot through the winter. And then, of course, again, I'm if you're asking me, I'm a big proponent of clover. Again, that's just what I go to.
Good deal. All right, let's talk about I guess hillside or kind of thick, and you can take us through this. And I hope I've got these in the right order.
Yeah. So on this one right here, this is when you're talking about creating cover and thickets. A lot of times, this is kind of the property that I see in Eastern Kentucky. And what has happened here, you have a piece of property that has been timbered and it's been high graded. Essentially, all the valuable oaks have been taken off this property, and what's left is a lot of maple, you know, a little bit of beech, things of that nature. So when I approach a site like this, and this landowner also wanted to manage for grouse, so I just had him, I suggested go ahead and just cut the rest of it down and let it all come back up. So that's essentially what he did. He took this, it was about 10 acres. He cut this down. So he cut that down in the winter, and it just kind of makes a big horseshoe, wraps around. You couldn't pay me to walk through that. It's so thick, but it's being used by wildlife. I mean, that is a thicket. And eventually what'll happen is, so, he's clear cut it. Everything's on one level. You'll get a big flourish of blackberries and a little bit of broom sedge, things like that will come up in there. And then over time, as he gets older, 5, 6 years older, the trees will start coming up, and then the trees will start winning. 15, 20 years down the road, you're going to have a bunch of saplings coming up. And then at that point, you start moving into a different type of management, like forest stand improvement. At that point, you hopefully you got some oaks coming on that you can selectively, free those up and allow those to come on up and be your main species in that area. Yeah. And that next picture there, again, when we're talking about cover, so this landowner here, this is about a 3-acre clear cut. Essentially, this had a lot of cedar in it, but there's oak all the way around it, and it was just a big block of woods. And I took into consideration, he wanted to see some more deer activity. He wanted to hold deer on his property, and I took in consideration what was going on around him, and his neighbors all had continuous forest. It was about 1,100 acres total of continuous forest. And I said, hey, what would really hold some deer here, let's clear cut this little small cedar stand here and get it to be a thicket. And that's essentially what we did here. We made him a little patch clear cut, and it's actually holding deer now.
So that little stand right there is he's starting to he see more deer in it.
Yeah, I think I've got another picture.
I hope I do. I don't.
Well, but
that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting right now as you're talking there. So.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah. So that's what he's doing. He's trying to make an area, essentially a little sanctuary area that could hold deer. Make a thicket. And that was pulling. I mean, it wasn't pulling every deer in it, but it was causing deer to hang out at his property a little bit more because, if you look around it, it's a big oak stand, which is great, but you can see all the way through it. There's not much undergrowth. So, creating this thicket right here, held some deer on his property. And they also provided a lot of browse and forage by that lush undergrowth that's coming up there.
I'm trying to find that next one. Did I already put this one up? All right.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. This is the same. It's a different landowner, same situation. If you see back in the far background back there, there's actually Kentucky River splits this property from that property. That property was heavily logged across the creek or across the river there. And he had about 600 acres of continuous forest along with some neighbors. And again, same thing. It was a cedar stand. It was a over mature cedar stand. And cedar stands make great cover and habitat when they're younger. As they get older, they tend to lose some of those bottom branches. There's hardly nothing growing underneath them. And so, in my opinion, you're better off resetting those back and making a thicket. So that's what we did. We left that lone pin oak that you see right there. This one was about 2.5 acres, but his big thing, he could physically from his stand watch deer leave his property, swim the river, and go up there to where they log to get to that thicker cover. And so when we put this 2.5 acre clear cut in there, he's killed bucks 4 years in a row now. I mean, they're not Boone and Crockett's, but to him, they're good bucks. Right. And they've all come out of this clear cut. And again, it's just correct.
Randall, if you've got mature stands of cedars and you're wanting to eliminate that, do you need to hinge cut those and leave them for ground cover? Do you need to cut them and get them out of there and just remove them altogether? What's the best plan there?
It depends on what resources you got available. So hinge cutting is a great tool, and I would hinge cut some of them and leave some of those tops there. But there's also people that harvest cedar, and those cedar logs are not worth a lot, but you could pull them out and actually get something for it, for your labor and stuff in that area. But if you have to leave them, it's not a huge thing. Cut them, then you can actually cut some paths through some of those cedars and actually direct how you want the deer movement to go. But that is one thing you can do.
So if you had different ages of cedars, maybe hinge cut the small stuff and essentially log the larger stuff, get it out of there.
Yeah, you can do that. And if you got different age stands of cedar on your property, you can kind of put them on a rotational basis. You might clear cut this little 2-acre stand this year, and then 5 years down the road, do the next one. And
as far as a beneficial cedar, as far as for cover or bedding or whatever that case is, 10 foot tall would be kind of the threshold.
Yeah, somewhere around that 15 foot tall. You can kind of watch them progressively. They start losing some of those bottom leaves. Now they'll still get in there at that age and use them for shelter cover as far as wind and stuff. But when they're really young, to the point where you can't hardly push through them, that's when they're in there quite a bit. And then they'll carry that on until about 10 or 15 years of age. And then when those cedars start getting really tall in that 20-foot range, that's when you start thinking about, do I need to set this back? Or what other cover do I have around here? Is this an area that I can set back?
And one last question about that. If you've got a cedar tree and you cut that, am I right or wrong? I've always heard that those roots will still draw the nutrients from the ground after you cut that tree off. How do you, if you cut, say, a 10-inch cedar tree, how's the best way to kill that so that it quits drawing the nutrients from all the other stuff, and now you can start growing that, that ground cover back?
Yeah, so a cedar tree won't resprout. So as long as you cut it below the last living limb, that root wad will eventually die out.
Okay.
Now it may stay pulling for another year or so, but eventually it will die out. Now it's hard to get them out of there still because they're just tough things to get out. But you can essentially leave them in there. You don't have to apply any kind of herbicides or anything to them. As long as you cut below the last live limb on a cedar tree, it will eventually die out. That stump will.
Good to know.
Yep. So this picture here is just an example of a situation where you might look at forest stand improvement as far as managing for your forest. This is a decently young stand, but the one here on my left in the foreground, that's a little red oak, actually a little scarlet oak. And then on the far right, you see that's a red maple. And if you look through there, that's kind of the way they are. They're all about the same size relatively. And this would be considered a crop tree release. What you're looking for is the oaks. And at this point, everybody's kind of at the same stage of growth. The maples might be a little bit taller, but you're going through and you're selectively picking out the oaks and cutting around, trying to release them on at least 3 sides. So if they start getting all the sunlight, they're not competing for sunlight anymore. This stand's about 20, 25 years old. And that's just things you can think about at that stage. Oaks grow way slower than, maples and beeches and things.
And Randall, our soil conservation officer, they've actually got tools you can check out. They've actually got the hack and spray or hack and squirt hatchets where, you attach that herbicide right to that hatchet. And, you don't have to, I know a lot of people look at this when they talk about 10% or forest stand improvement. I don't want to go in there and have to cut all this stuff. You don't have to. You can actually do it with them standing. Yep.
And if you burn firewood, you talk about a quick way to dry some wood out and get it ready to throw into the stove. You just hack it and that tree dies standing. It'll cure out, in a year like that with all that air pushing through it. And then at the same time, you're providing food for insects and birds and things. This is another similar situation. It's just showing you, of course, that was in the wintertime. This is in the summer. We've got a hickory right here, and that dark colored one is a hickory. And essentially what I'm showing here is there's so much beech and maple in this stand that nothing else is being able to, there's no understory. There's nothing other than when mass production happens, there's really nothing for deer to forage on, in a setting like this, along with other things. It's just a blank canvas underneath. So when you get in situations like this, you want to try to punch holes through it to let pockets of sunlight come in, to start some more herbaceous growth. And, as far as oak regeneration, if oaks can't get full sunlight or at least filtered sunlight, they have a hard time sustaining that next generation that's going to come on if you decide to harvest a mature stand. So that's just kind of what this is showing. When I look at woods, I'm looking at, what species are there, what type of management can I do to increase the species that you want to see or that need to be there. And this is just another indication that there's no understory within this stand of woods here.
And we're talking about that sunlight hitting the ground basal level, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Paul Priest says I use basil bark spray, works a lot faster.
Yeah, basil bark. The great thing about basil bark is you can pretty much use it year round. The only thing you have to be cautious with basil bark is it will volatilize on you. So if you do it during hot weather, it can get too hot and it'll actually make into a gas and go up to can kill other trees. But it's great for the wintertime. Usually in a hack and squirt situation, when you get into end of February, starting going into March, the sap flow starts coming up. So you have to stop that practice because the sap will actually push the herbicide out. With basil bark, you can carry right on through with it.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know what that ain't a picture of us.
I don't even know what that is. That's not one. That's not one of yours.
That's not one of mine.
Well, let's take that off there then.
So this is what I'm showing here is this was a stand had 4-stand improvement on it. Of course, this is a little red maple in here, but you can see in the background all the new growth that's coming on. What I'm showing here is how the deer have come through and nipped the top of this maple off. And that's what they'll do. They'll just walk through and they'll nip. And if you go through the woods, especially right now, you find greenbrier, they're nipping that. They're nipping these little saplings that are coming up with new growth. In the wintertime, they'll nip the buds off. Those buds are highly nutritious. So, if you're against using herbicides, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still achieve it. Cut that tree down. If it's, something similar that you feel comfortable cutting, cut it off, about knee high, and let that thing resprout. And you've got plenty of forage right here that deer are going to use. Yeah, so this is just, again, showing how this had a 4-stand improvement onto it. And you can see the amount of understory that's coming on now.
Very good. And I guess last but not least, the importance of woodland water holes.
Yeah, I love these little practices right here. This is, we call these ephemeral pools. They're designed to pretty much hold water during the wet seasons, spring, fall, mainly for amphibians and reptiles that have a place for breeding habitat. But they're attractant to wildlife. It's amazing when folks start putting these in, the amount of tracks that come in. Deer are curious anyway. But when you put one of these here, the amount of deer tracks and stuff that show up, a couple of days later, if they're done correctly, they're going to hold water year round. And this one's only, it's about 1,200 square feet. And they kind of built it around that pine tree there. It's on that little knob there. It's kind of got creative with it. But, typically I like to put these on, if you got a bench, put these on a bench. They hold well there. Or if you've got I wouldn't say on the top of a ridge because you tend to get shallower soils up there, but kind of a mid slope down just off a ridge. They tend to fit in right there as well. But the good thing about Kentucky is we got a lot of clay soils, so you could typically make one hold in about any situation, and they're fairly easy to put in. I mean, all this, excuse me, this was just done with a bobcat, and they essentially just created a divot and made a little berm there on the backside, and it's holding about 14, 16 inches of water.
You want to talk about the burns or the proposed WMA maps?
Let's see the maps there. Yeah, so these are what this is. You know, if I come to your place and write you a management plan, this is a map I'm going to provide you right here, based on what we looked at and what your goals are. Excuse me, let me get a drink here. So, again, we're going to have that conversation about what you want to see, and then, this property, for example, we walked around all this property, me and the landowner, and I took into consideration what he wanted to see and things I noticed while I was there. I've usually got my phone. I've got a little app on there that I can plan stuff as we walk. And that's essentially, once I got back to the office, I developed this plan with him to show him things that I'm recommending. I'm not saying he has to do everything, but these are just things he can start on, things that I think can improve his property if he wanted to implement them. In the same situation here, this landowner, he didn't want much to do with his forest. I looked at his forest. I made some suggestions, but he really wanted to concentrate on open field things. So again, I took that in consideration, and this is what I came up with him. As far as possible food plot locations for annual and cool season, and then also what he can do to enhance his field. And pretty much his fields had a lot of native stuff already grown in them, but they were competing with cool season fescue, which fescue is great for livestock, and but for wildlife, it's not really that beneficial. So one way you can combat that is you could spray this whole field with glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup that everybody knows about. But you could spray this field in late March, early April, and you're not going to harm any of the native warm season plants that you want to see in this field. And you would just target the fescue. And what that does is it removes, you're not going to kill it all at once, but you're going to knock it back enough to where it's going to allow more things, like more native forbs, more native grasses, clovers to come in, things of that nature to take in that space. It's just kind of hanging out in the soil because it doesn't have room to grow at that moment.
Nice maps, man. Those are really nice. And of course, we had a question about burns.
Yep. So what we're doing as an agency is we're trying to get private landowners more involved in burning and the benefits of burning, and just trying to get people more comfortable with it. So last year we started these. They're called Learn and Burn Controlled Burn workshops, and essentially what we're doing is we're having an 8-hour course. It'll be on a Saturday, and in that 8-hour course, we're going to go over, writing a burn plan, things you need to take note of, the weather, the RH, the wind, how it all can affect when you burn. We're going to kind of walk you through those kind of things, talk about the types of tools that you need to have, all in that roughly 8-hour course. And then from that course, in the fall or early spring, we're going to let you come onto a burn and actually be part of that burn. Let you be the folks that actually work the burn. We'll be there for guidance, but we want you to actually do the burning so you get hands-on experience. And it's just a way to get folks more comfortable with burning. We're hoping it leads to more burning across state, but, eventually we hope that, by folks taking these types of classes that maybe they can get some kind of certification to be able to burn outside of the burn window. In Kentucky in spring, you've got to burn. If you're a private landowner, depending on what county you are, some counties are a little bit different, but you've got a burning window to where you can only burn between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. That is your window to burn, legally, without getting a citation. But we're hoping, and then there's another period in the fall. I kind of blank on the day of that. It's like October through first part of December, somewhere in that range. Again, it's 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., which is fine. I mean, it's easy to control burn then. But the problem is when you're burning that late, your RH is up. It's harder to get things to continuously burn unless it's just really dry fuels. So we're hoping it leads to where if we can show that people have the certification and the training, that maybe they can burn at any point during the day. That may be an uphill battle, but this is one way to start with it. So we're going to try to do these, we'll do 3 this fall, then we'll do 3 next spring, and then we'll try to kind of keep that pattern, 3 per season. So we're doing 1 in London, we're doing 1 in Grant County, and at the Lloyd WMA, and then we're doing 1 at West Liberty.
So this August 19th is at Crittenden, at Lloyd.
Yep.
August 26th in London, which is
Yep.
Laurel County. That's be at the Laurel County UK Extension Office. And then 1 in West Liberty on September the 30th.
Yep. And it's $75 to attend the class. We'll provide you lunch. And we're going, like I said, we're trying to keep it pretty small at 30 people. But yeah, well, you see up there, you get continue ed credits for it. But again, we're going to start trying to do these more frequently across the state. And again, trying to just get folks comfortable with burning. It's intimidating for somebody for me to suggest to somebody, hey, you need to burn your field off. And they look at me with, saucer plate eyes, and they're like, what are you talking about? And it is intimidating. But once you've done it a couple of times and you see that if you've taken the precautions, getting your fire breaks in, having enough people there to watch things, it's really a beneficial tool that needs to be utilized a lot more.
Very good. Man, I'll tell you what, a lot of good information. I hope people will listen, going from last week with basic food plot to the advanced stuff tonight, and really understanding, the most important thing for me is whether you want to be simple and do the basics or you want to go all out. People need to understand that no matter what you want to do, you need to do something. And if everybody does a little, it means a lot to our wildlife. And a lot of these problems that we have, we encounter and we have occurred over decades and decades of misuse of land is our fault. It's due to, whether it may be, bad practices for whatever it is we're doing, or bringing in invasives. All the invasive stuff is on our head. So, it doesn't matter if you own an acre, a half acre, or you own 1,000 acres, whatever. Doing something is better than doing nothing. Now, there's some programs out there that people may not be aware of that are really good programs, cost share programs, a lot of things. Touch on that before we call it a night.
Yep. So again, there's 16, about to be 17 of us across the state. The best way to get in touch with us, if you go to the Fish and Wildlife webpage, there's a tab at the top right that says contact us. Click on that. You just put your county in. It's going to give you all the contacts for Fish and Wildlife that service your county, all the way from private lands biologists to fisheries biologists to regional biologists. But, we all make these technical guidance business and help write you a plan. The other side of what I do is what I mentioned before, the NRCS cost share programs. And what that is the Farm Bill, which is the USDA program. It essentially they want to influence a lot of good conservation across the state. And whether that's building on wildlife habitat for endangered species or getting rid of invasives, a lot of their focus is on agriculture, clean water, good soils, that type of thing. But they also set aside stuff for wildlife. And that's where I come in. I'll write you a plan. I will, gear it towards your goals. And then if you want to take it a step farther and actually go through these cost share programs, I can help you on that end too. How you do that is you need to have a farm number for your property, it's really easy to get. You just need to take a deed to the Farm Service Agency. And the best way to do that is I would just Google Farm Service Agency, look up, depending on what county you're in. And that way you can see which Farm Service Agency covers your county. But just take a deed in, they give you a farm number, and then it allows you to participate in these USDA programs. But these cost share programs, everything that I've mentioned tonight is something they cover. Now you may work with Fish and Wildlife, or you may work with Kentucky Division of Forestry on some of this stuff, but all these conservation type practices are stuff that's all cost shared under these programs. There's no catch to them. I've talked to landowners all the time that say, hey, I heard that if I do this, I've got to let people hunt on my property for, the next year or whatever. And that's true. The biggest thing with these programs is they have lifespans on them. And all that's saying is if they're going to pay you the cost share to implement these conservation practices, they want you to maintain it as that practice, for 5 to 10 years. A lot of times that's not a problem for folks, because if it's forest land, hey, you're going to want to manage it for at least 10 more years anyway. So the lifespans is usually is the only thing to them.
Very good. That's awesome. And people get afraid of that because they think that their property's tied up.
Yeah.
But there's no need, if you're doing this anyway, you're doing this for the longevity of your property and the wildlife on your property. So it's actually just an incentive to say, listen, for the next 5 years or 10 years, depending on the program length, you're going to maintain this and take care of it. And that's what you want to do anyway. There's no need in doing it for a year or two. You want to do that.
Yeah. And the programs they cover, they cover about 75% of what it would cost for you to implement that conservation practice. So, if you can implement, a pollinator plant, for example, and it only costs you 25% of what that total would be, it's a good benefit. I mean, you're helping out a lot of things at that point.
Awesome, man. Well, man, I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for coming on the show. Matt, you got anything to add?
I'm good, man. Like I said, I've benefited from Fish and Wildlife programs in the past, and of course, now on the new piece of property, I'm always trying to tinker here and there and make small improvements year after year. And after tonight's talk, I got a couple more ideas for upcoming.
Yeah. Man, there's no reason why people shouldn't at least be doing something. We've mentioned, Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. Log on to fw.ky.gov, Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife. You can Google search it. Get on there, look up your private lands biologist list. There's a lot of good habitat literature on there that you can read. You can also, we've mentioned UK extension offices. Every county, to my knowledge, has a UK extension office. And a lot of time these extension offices or the county soil conservation has tools that you can use. I know that Matt has utilized the extension offices there in his neck of the woods for no-till drills and other farm implements that maybe are very expensive, but that is on a share or borrow basis, sometimes for a small fee, sometimes for free. There's no reason. There's always a way. And if you're looking for knowledge, just like with Randall and many other people, there's always a way to find out, how you can do this stuff. It doesn't matter if you're new to it. It doesn't matter if you're an expert at it. You can always learn something from it. Randall, anything in closing?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk. And it was a great conversation. I just thank y'all for having me on.
Man, thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for all your service to the Commonwealth, and keep up the good work and the good fight, man. We appreciate it.
All righty. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ray.
Appreciate it very much. Let's see what Paul has to say here. Our buddy Paul says, yes, I got one of those ponds on top of the hill and it never goes dry. I work with Harley Weaver for 8 years, and that's one of our private lands biologists over here in my neck of the woods.
Yep. Now, if you say Harley's name 3 times, he'll show up.
Oh, goodness. Thank you, Paul, very much. Folks, we appreciate you all. Hope that everybody has a good rest of the week. Going to be a hot one this week, but listen, there's always something to do. Get out there. Remember, it's a good time to be out there working on your property, and what you put into it now pays dividends this fall and winter. So I hope everybody maybe learned something tonight. And remember, we've got a new YouTube page. We got the first 2 episodes on there and all of our lives. So be sure to go over there. That information will be at the end here in the credits. Also, if you're looking for a trip of a lifetime, don't forget to contact TLC Outfitters for your South African safari trip. The time to start planning is now. Gentlemen, Matt, Randall, thank you all very much. Hope you all have a good week. And folks, we hope to see you next time on air and outdoors with TLC Outfitters. Y'all have a good one.
Eastern Kentucky, where I was raised, where the wildlife and mountains call my name. I was born to hunt, I was born to guide, a camouflage on a rifle by my side. Just good old country boys chasing dreams in the Appalachian Mountains, fields and streams. From those white-tailed bucks strutting toms, the bugling elks that are on the run. Where those dreams are made, the trophies is our game. The TLC Outfitters is our name.